Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another recap of the month that was over here on That's Comical, even though it is the first time that we are doing so on this channel. But if you have been checking out the brand new That's Comical YouTube page, you do have the ability to check on all of the other recaps that we have done for the past couple of months in 2021, as well as a 2020 recap that launched the official segment that we're doing here today moving forward. So of course, in order to do this, I've got to have Dan here with me. Dan, it's great to have you here for another monthly recap here for That's Comical.
Great to be back.
Yes, and we're going to be changing the format just a little bit, everybody. We're actually going to keep it on the short side. Not that we don't have anything great to talk about. It's just that as we go along, we learn from our mistakes, and one of the few things that we've realized that when it comes to YouTube audiences, being long-winded is not always a good thing, so that's partially and mostly my fault, so I'm going to really do my very best to make sure that we just get to the point, but still give you guys a great show. So once again, if you are here for the very first time, don't forget to give this video a like, and of course, leave us a comment. We would love to talk to you, but if you want to see what's going on this channel, because there is so much. It may not look it right now, but plenty is coming in the coming weeks. Everything from comic books to manga to anime, it's all here. So please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you are up to date with all of us here at the That's Comical team, as well as our latest content. So how excited are you for the summer in comics, Dan? Because I gotta tell you, it looks like it's going to be a very productive summer for the comic book industry. But the truth of the matter is, I don't really know how I feel about a lot of the stuff that is coming out, especially when we talk about the big two.
Well, I'm still excited for, the publishers, the independents. Always good, consistent stories. You got Something is Killing the Children. You got Stillwater. You got Crossover. You got Department of Truth. All great stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing, honestly, is exciting me from the big two. When they do their major events lately, they've been a little bit stale. I don't know how you feel about that, but it just hasn't wowed me.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, but that's really what the question is in regards to that topic, because obviously this recap is about May 2021, and we got two events from Marvel. And the thing that really made me laugh, I think that's actually the correct word to describe it, is it was two big events that were basically recycled events that took place when Dan and I were collecting comics in the 90s. Marvel did a brand new Heroes Reborn, and they just released Heroes Return. And they decided to also bring back a very controversial Spider-Man story called The Clone Saga, but they thought maybe it would be a little bit different this time if we decided to take it away from Peter Parker and focus it now on Miles Morales, which I don't know if you knew about this, but Miles Morales is celebrating his 10th anniversary as part of the Marvel Comics family. I think that that is wonderful.
I did not know that.
But I think that when you're going in the direction of recycling a not so popular event from the 90s, I don't think that that's the right way to really show appreciation for a truly revolutionary character in Marvel Comics.
Agreed. Now, granted, I didn't read either the first Clone Saga or the second, so I can't really comment on the content. I'm just going based off on, you and the reviews that I've heard about it. But I guess they try to take something and make it better.
Yeah.
I mean, Heroes Reborn also, I bought a couple issues because it had a few first appearances of characters, just for speculation, but I didn't read it.
Yeah, I mean, there were some people that did say that it was a fun read, but sometimes fun does not necessarily mean it's a good read. But they say that there is a market, because when I was going on to other YouTube channels over here in the comic book community, there were a lot of people that were actually saying that the books were selling. Now, was it because people were speculating or was it because people were reading? I'm honestly not sure, but I just don't understand why they feel that if we recycle stories, it takes away from the loyal and avid comic book reader like yourself and myself when we are always excited for new things coming from our favorite comic book companies and characters. But we always want something that's fresh and new. We don't necessarily want something that's done before, especially when we know that it didn't work the first time. Now, granted, when you take a look at the Clone Saga, one of the things that I would say was a good thing was the introduction of Ben Reilly, first as the Scarlet Spider, and then he became Spider-Man for a little while, though the pushback in the 90s came from the fact that they discovered that Peter Parker was a clone, to which they rectified it in the 4-part series of Spider-Man Revelations, where they said Peter Parker was actually the real Spider-Man and Ben Reilly was the clone, and through that, they even decided for the very first time since the death of Gwen Stacy to bring Norman Osborn back from the dead as the Green Goblin. Now, at the time, I don't know if that was a good thing, but clearly throughout these last few years, we did see Norman Osborn in some great stories. I haven't read this one, but I hear so many good things about Dark Reign. So many people say that that is an excellent, excellent crossover event. Now, there's a very interesting thing happening with Spider-Man, but we're going to get to that later because it's going to fall into a very important category and talking point. But I don't know. I mean, Spider-Man has been evented out. There were so many events that were happening with Spider-Man, and I got to give credit to Nick Spencer for working like a dog. I don't know if he's working as hard as Chip Zdarsky is, but Nick Spencer dealing with everything from The Last Remains to the Chameleon Conspiracy and now Sinister War to the conclusion of his run. I mean, I will give him props for working this hard, but from what I'm hearing is people are just tired of all of these Spider-Man events.
I mean, I know a lot of people that have said that they weren't too happy with Nick Spencer as the writer. He drew out a lot of the stories and took too long to get to some of the points. I don't know who's taken over for him, but I think people are looking for new blood on Spider-Man.
We're going to get to that very, very soon. But the funny thing is, when you take a look at Marvel and what they're doing, like they're really pumping out these events and they're really like heavily promoting them. But then you take a look at what DC is doing. DC does in fact have an event or two happening, but they're not really promoting them. I mean, I was listening this week to one of the YouTube channels and they were talking about Infinite Frontier, which is now a 6-issue miniseries that is apparently leading to another DC crisis story. Give me a good writer, I will read it. And right now, the main reason why I am reading Infinite Frontier, and I will say issue number 1 was a very good read, is just because of the fact that Josh Williamson is on the book. And I know that he's got a Deathstroke comic in the works coming at the end of September, and Robin right now is one of the hottest series in DC. So it's good to know that they are using him for these events, but I'm just really surprised that they're not really hyping them up a little bit. But maybe that's a good thing, because sometimes the good stuff, when it slowly and quietly trickles in, then the buzz really starts to form. And when a buzz starts to form as opposed to something getting jammed down your throat, that really gives the reader a little bit more of an incentive to want to pick those books up.
Yeah, I think if you're, like you said, if you're jamming it down, I think it takes away from the quality of the work.
Yeah. But in regards to something that's been jammed down people's throats, we're going to go back to Marvel now. I got to tell you, some people are actually pleasantly surprised because of the fact that even though they were not happy with where this specific story was going, there have been a couple of drops in issues here and there, and people are like, okay, something's happening here. And you're going to laugh, but we obviously have to talk about X-Men again, because we are now about to conclude the Hellfire Gala, which a lot of people are really not too keen on. And I'm not reading all of them, but everybody was saying that something's happening in planet-sized X-Men. I mean, people who have been reading the original House of X and Powers of 10, they loved Pepe Larraz's art, and he's back on this specific book, as well as the brand new writer of the brand new X-Men title, which is Jerry Duggan. Of course, we all know that Jonathan Hickman is no longer writing X-Men at the moment. He finished with issue 21, and now the series got rebooted. But the funny thing is, people were saying, you know, X-Men 17 to 20 were very good issues because they were picking up some pieces on some older stories that we saw in the early portions of the X-Men run that a lot of people were excited about, as well as some of the things that were going on with Hox and Pox. And at the end of issue number 20, a big reveal was dropped. We finally know what's going on with Moira McTaggart. She's there, and the word Inferno had been circling the X-Men world. And even though I know you haven't read that story yet, which I'm hoping you will soon, you know that when it comes to Inferno in the world of X-Men, that's very much compared to what Crisis is for DC Comics.
Yeah, I'm happy they brought back Moira. Too bad it took only 28 plus issues to do that. She was a great storyline.
And the funny thing is, people were saying that's just how Hickman writes his stuff. Now, granted, one of the few things that I did when I started reading the Hickman stuff was I went and got my hands on all of Hickman's Fantastic Four run. And yes, it's how he writes. He puts the pieces out there, he builds and builds and builds, he develops the characters, and then he culminates it in an amazing climax that basically makes you say, okay, I'm glad that I read all of this stuff because it all paid off in the end. But when it came to the X-Men and all the other X titles that were following it, people were saying this buildup just doesn't seem like Hickman's usual good stuff. So where's the payoff? So when Planet Size X-Men came out, people were saying, like, what's going to happen? Like, is it going to be big? Is it going to just be a buzzkill? Well, it was big. Something big happened. The mutants terraformed Mars and called it the leading planet of the solar system. Storm officially is now the queen of the formerly known planet Mars, now known as Araco. So you take all the stuff that happened in Ten of Swords, and there's your culmination. All of the Iraqi mutants are now living on this planet, and Storm is ruling them. And a second sword station was built. So you now have Al Ewing's cosmic universe getting tied into this through the Last Annihilation story that's happening right now. And people are wondering, especially after the Hellfire Gala comics that we've seen, because other heroes were featured in there, like Captain America was questioning things, the Fantastic Four was questioning things. The Fantastic Four leads back to the 4-part miniseries that was written by Chip Zdarsky, Fantastic Four X. So we don't really know what's going to happen, because in September, we're getting the 4-part series of Inferno, and Inferno is going to give us Moira, this hanging thread storyline that involved Nimrod and Mystique. I have to be honest with you, part of me is sort of glad that I read all of this stuff, because it looks like the payoff is coming. And based on everything that I had read with his Fantastic Four run, I'm saying to myself, maybe we are going to get something truly special here, and I just don't want to miss it.
Having said all that and read all that, would you recommend a person getting into it to read Powers of 10, House of X, and skip the rest? Or they must have the filler issues in between, or like X of Swords, Do they need that to get to the end?
That is a great question, and I really want to try and answer it the best way that I can. I would definitely recommend that you read some of the early issues of X-Men. Like, I would say read from issues 1 to 7. In regards to Ten of Swords, that's a real slippery slope. I would definitely say you don't have to read all of it. I would say maybe read the 2 one-shots and maybe read the last 3 parts, because that's where the events between Arakko and Krakoa actually take place, so we understand what Arakko is and why it's here. I would say read X-Men after Ten of Swords, issues 16 to 21. Just read those issues. They're quick reads. Some of them are very, very good reads. And I would probably say skip all the other X books. I don't think you need to read them, but the question is going to be through Inferno, is it going to tie in all the other X titles? I will, however, recommend Way of X. It's just a well-written story about Nightcrawler and the whole thing that's going on right now with Onslaught. Apparently, Way of X is going to turn into a brand new X title. It's not going to continue, but it's going to become like an Onslaught title. So as someone who knows Onslaught, who read Onslaught, you read a little bit of Onslaught, I think, as well. So I'm curious to see how they will use Onslaught in this. And Spurrier is the writer, and Spurrier is doing a great job with Way of X. So I will definitely read those. And Sword is good. I would say read issues number 1, skip the King in Black stuff, and then just read past the King in Black stuff with Sword, because I'm very excited to see how he's going to tie it in with Guardians of the Galaxy. And I am actually planning to read The Last Annihilation, because it's not a massive story. It's a very small story. There's only like 3 tie-ins. I think the total amount of issues that are going to be that entire thing is like less than 10. But I'm excited because you are an Al Ewing fan. You've been reading The Immortal Hulk, so I wouldn't be surprised if you recommended me to just read more Al Ewing stuff.
Yeah, he's one of those top writers out there.
Yeah,
Doesn't disappoint.
Right. So speaking of Al Ewing and writers, this is where some massive news was dropped in the last couple of weeks. And I really want to get your thoughts on this, because these are all writers that you like, but I want to tap back into what was going on with Nick Spencer. So obviously we all heard the news that Nick Spencer is going to be leaving Amazing Spider-Man with issue 74. And we don't know exactly what it is, but some people are speculating that we're going to be getting the death of Spider-Man. Some people are believing that it's just going to be Spider-Man retiring as Spider-Man, because the thing that was a little bit surprising was, did that mean that Miles Morales was officially going to be Spider-Man? I mean, honestly, I love a good passing of the torch story if it's written well, but they're bringing Ben Reilly back to be Spider-Man. So again, what are they getting at here? I don't understand. But you're absolutely right. The speculation was very high. Who is going to write Spider-Man next? Now, a lot of people wanted Chip Zdarsky to write it. And I'm not surprised that so many people want Chip Zdarsky to write it, because you read Spider-Man Life Story and you loved it. I am reading Spider-Man Spider Shadow, and I am really liking Chip Zdarsky's writing. You're reading Daredevil, and you and I have been reading tons of his indie work. He is the James Brown of comic books. He's the hardest working man in show business in the world of comic books. And everybody thinks that everything he's touching right now turns to gold. It's like, I don't even care about what the comic is. If Chip Zdarsky's writing it, I'm picking it up. Plain and simple.
Despite all that, he's still, I think, underrated.
I agree. But honestly, I threw out a name that I wanted to see write Spider-Man only because of the fact that I read Erratic from Upshot, and that's Kari Andrews. Kari Andrews is a great writer. He's a great artist. To me, he's sort of like the reincarnation of Todd McFarlane. He writes the comics, he draws the comics, and I have such high expectations for the miniseries Amazing Fantasy. I think that that is going to be so much fun, because Kari Andrews is a fun writer. And I said to myself, he should write Spider-Man. A fun writer writing a fun character, why not? But we got the worst case scenario. We now have like 4 or 5 different writers that are going to be writing like an issue here and an issue there. So unfortunately, I think that Amazing Spider-Man is going to be a hot mess until they try and find some stability. I mean, I am very surprised that they don't seem to have a game plan, but who knows? But if I were, I don't know about you, but I don't want an up and coming writer taking the reins. I want someone that I know is gonna hype it up, get the fans interested, and people buy the books, because that's the thing that people need to understand. Like, look, it started in the 90s mostly, we followed the writers, we followed the artists, and we're doing the exact same thing right now. But why are we doing that? Because the stories that these guys are writing and these girls are writing are good. That's the thing. It's not about the speculation. We're actually reading the books.
I'm going to make a bold prediction. I'm going to say it's going to be Cates and Stegman eventually.
Well, I'm very glad that you brought up Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman, because there was a little changing of the guard in one of the most interesting but exciting ways, because I will just say, thank God King in Black is over. That was a marathon, which really should have felt like a sprint. And unfortunately, I don't think we got what we wanted at the end. I read Venom 200. I got to say, it was a nice little happy ending. But when it comes to Venom, I don't think that's really what you want. But you know what? Look, Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman did something special over with the Venom comic. They really gave us a strong run from a character that had always been struggling in his own solo series to really get that perfect run. Now, was this one perfect? No. But was it better than most? Yes.
He turned Venom into an A-list character.
Absolutely. And he gave us a really cool story with Dylan, which was a really cool thing to see. But now, Venom having the symbiote god embodiment within him, because Mel being defeated, now Venom is going to be a part of the Marvel Cosmic Universe. So who better to take the reins for that kind of story than Al Ewing, who knows how to do cosmic, whether you're looking at the popular stuff over at Marvel or indie titles like We Only Find Them When They're Dead. Al Ewing knows how to write cosmic.
I'd like to see him put a little bit of horror also, because he did that on Immortal Hulk. So I'd like to see like a combination of cosmic and horror included.
And speaking of horror, that leads into the second half of that very interesting piece of news. Donny Cates, but not Ryan Stegman. It's just Donny Cates. He's going to be starting to write a brand new Hulk run in October. Now, as someone who doesn't have many Hulk comics, I got to tell you, I have never been this excited about a Hulk run. I have been reading Donny Cates. Outside of his Marvel stuff, I personally think that his indie stuff is incredible. I love crossover. I wish I would have gotten on board with Baby Teeth. I know that a lot of people like that, and that's coming to an end in issue number 20. There's also some rumors that he's going to be doing stuff with Todd McFarlane on the brand new Spawns universe, but I don't know what it is. But I got to be honest with you, my friend. I am very, very excited for Hulk. I still am not going to throw Thor out in the trash, because while I'm not reading anything post-Prey, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen after issue number 17. If a brand new interesting story comes out, I might go back into Thor. But thanks to you, I read Thanos Wins, which was an incredible story. Silver Surfer Black, amazing story. He writes these characters in the most unique of ways, which is why I am very much not so on the hype train for Venom, but definitely excited for Hulk. I am going to be picking up issue number 1, and I'm going to see how that story goes.
I mean, for all the people that were upset at Cates for killing Null and getting off Venom, and they think Dylan Brock, I don't know, may not be a character anymore, or Cosmic Ghost Rider is in the past now, but you have to understand, in comics, no one's ever dead and no one's ever gone. They always make comebacks. They retcon people. No one ever stays dead. So you
That's
don't need to
true.
worry about that. And especially Donny Cates, he brings his characters into all different kinds of stories, whether it be the independents or the big publisher like Marvel.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if he'll ever write Spider-Man. I mean, I know that one of the other big things that's going on is he just dropped that he and Ryan Stegman are going to be reuniting on an indie title. They actually just announced their own comic label. We don't know which publishing company it's with. A lot of people are thinking that it's Image because it seems like most of his work right now outside of Marvel is with Image Comics. So I am curious about this brand new series that he announced called Vanish. We don't know any more than the name and a couple of characters. We don't know the characters' names to a degree, but we don't know anything more. We just know that it's coming. We don't know the release date, but one way or another, as someone who has been reading Donny Cates, especially when he's been paired with Stegman, regardless of how King in Black ended, you follow the writers. You never know what you're going to get. I mean, you might get a great story, or you might end up getting something that you really don't know what to think about. And that example for me right now is definitely Geiger, because I love Jeff Johns, but I don't really know what to think of Geiger. Right now, I just want to, my attitude in regards to buying comics right now is if you're not loving the series, just at least get to the end of the story arc. Just at least see how it ends. And if you like what you're seeing, then maybe you'll continue. But I definitely see myself cutting myself off on a couple of titles that I have been reading lately, just because of the fact that they're good, but I haven't really been truly loving them. But let me just see how it goes with the entirety of the story arc, and I'll take it from there. That's my attitude.
I mean, yeah, I'll agree. If you like a writer, you give him a shot, continue the story arc, and then you go definitely go from there.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I will definitely start off with my quick pick right now, because when there was a lot of hype for this specific title, and when I started reading the first issues, they were good. Like, I was enjoying them. But then all of a sudden, this twist that I never saw coming happened. And now with every single issue, there's just another layer, another layer, another layer. And that is Radiant Black. This is issue number 5. I have been so surprised by how amazing this comic is turning out. Like, every single issue, when I get to that last page, I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here?
Would you
So
say that's flown under the radar a little bit?
definitely, people who knew about it since February are still talking about it, but the people who did not get in at the very beginning are not really talking much about it, but they really should be. Kyle Higgins is doing such an amazing job with this story. When I got to issue number 4, I was saying to myself, I might be done with this in the end of the first story arc. And then issue number 4 comes out, and I'm like, oh, whoa, like, what did he just do? Like, this is just crazy. And then at the end of issue 5, that was my pick of that week. And I'm like, I'm staying on board with this story. So I'm excited for the end of the story arc, and I'm very excited to see where issues number 7 and 8 go. I'm just really, really excited. Very excited.
See, what's awesome about that is when you get on a book early and then it pops like that, feels good. Like, I didn't listen to you about Stray Dogs, which I regret, but same type of deal. It got
Well,
acclaim later on. It did not in the beginning. I mean, it was hyped like very little, but now for some reason it's getting crazy hype.
Well, it's just because of the fact that, when I first saw that it was coming out, what sold me on that was the story. And that's only because of the fact that while I am not the biggest fan of horror, though, when it comes to comic books alone, I am loving horror. But when I saw the artwork, that was what sold me, because it looked like a Disney movie gone completely off the rails. And I'm like, oh, that is awesome. And what I love so much about Stray Dogs is that they are such easy, quick reads. It's all about the visuals. They're not silent issues, but there's very little dialogue. The pictures, the artwork, it speaks volumes. That's what I love so much about Stray Dogs, and it's not done. That's what makes me very excited. There's a new series coming, and I'm glad because it just shows that people read it, people liked it. Tony Fleeks definitely has become one of the writers that's on my radar right now, and I will pick up the next series. I mean, I believe that the Stray Dogs trade will be coming out very soon, but also at the same time, I don't really know about the speculation pricing on the Stray Dog issues. I don't know if they are like running for extremely high prices right now.
Cover A for number 1 is going for 40 plus. I know there was a preview issue that was released prior to issue 1 is going for $300 plus.
I didn't even know about that, actually.
And some of the store exclusives are going for also pretty high amounts. So it's the speculation and the resale market of the issue is pretty good.
Well,
So
I
good
used
got in.
Yeah, well, I used to be a variant cover fan, and I'm not really into those. But with Stray Dogs, I was very much on to the
I
A
love the movie
covers.
variants.
Oh yeah, the B covers are my personal
Awesome.
favorites, and I wouldn't have, because again, like the comics themselves, they feed the comic fan in me, but those movie cover B cover variants, that's the movie fan in me. So I had to get at least the B covers. I know that there are so many other movie variants in the various printings that they've been making lately. I mean, the funny thing was there were 2 movie variant covers that came out with issue number 1 and issue number 5. With issue number 1, it was Silence of the Lambs, which was the B cover, which I bought, but there was also a Blair Witch Project cover. And with issue number 5, I picked up the B cover, which was Friday the 13th, but there was also a Stephen King's It cover, which was still pretty cool. But they got everything from Psycho to Scream, and I think that that is just beautifully done. I love the artwork, and
Yeah, it's awesome.
I gotta tell you, once again, Tony Fleeks, like he is on my radar now. I don't know what else is going to happen after Stray Dogs, but Stray Dogs Dog Days, that's the name of the next series, and I'm excited to pick it up and read it when it comes out.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with it too. My pick of the week is Something is Killing the Children, Volume 3 trade paperback.
Right.
Even if you're not reading it, I'm sure if you're collecting comics, you've heard of it. It's James Tynion, a great series. I know a lot of the early issues are very expensive, so if you want to start reading it, get the trade paperback. Starting from issue 16, they're going into the origin story of Erica Slaughter.
Right.
So obviously catch up on that, or you could start from issue 16 on. I believe comic stores are ordering more of the issues, so they should be readily available. It's going to be a TV show.
Yep.
I know Tynion said it's in the works. I believe for Netflix. Even if it's not a TV show, I enjoy the story. So I think it's definitely a pick that I would get behind. It's horror genre as well, so you know that in itself is hot right now, and just overall a great story.
Well, I gotta say, I'm very, very glad that I picked up the issue number 1 7th printing, which was the foil cover, as well as the foil cover for Invincible number 1. Those two are sort of going up there in price right now, but I was also very glad to at least read the first issue, and again, it didn't grab me. I know that I am probably somewhere inside kicking myself because you're missing out on this amazing speculation. Like, you want to talk about the speculators market, you can't get more hotter than Something is Killing the Children. But I'm not feeling that FOMO right now, like when it comes to that title. So I'm not really upset about that. However, I am going to be picking up the Free Comic Book Day book that is linked to Something is Killing the Children. I think it's called Slaughter. So I will be picking that one up. I'm very
House of
excited about
Slaughter.
that. House of Slaughter, thank you. So I will pick that up just because. But when it comes to Free Comic Book Day, which is August 14th, everybody, this year, the comic book that I'm really excited about is definitely going to be the We Live book. I am so excited to pick it up. So that's going to wrap up our discussion about May 2021, and I am very excited for our next episode where we discuss everything that was going on in June, because we just scratched the surface on horror, because that is definitely something that is taking the comic book world by storm. People who were never horror fans are starting to pick up these books. This is a genre that's been around in the world of comics since the 1940s. What I'm also very excited about is that Cammie will be joining us for this conversation because she bleeds horror, and we're just going to be talking about all of these great stories and all of these great creators and how horror is being intertwined in everything, because you're seeing it right now in Marvel with things like the current Thor comic storyline, and you saw it with Venom. You're going to see it in DC with Fear State coming out around Halloween. And the one thing that I am very excited to talk about is the birth of the Spawn universe, because you've got comic book, you've got classic anti-hero / superhero elements, but you've had horror elements within the Spawn comics since issue #1, and this is a brand new launching point for Spawn fans, old and new. And I gotta be honest with you, after reading this book, I am so excited for what's yet to come, and I'm really excited to talk about this and some of my favorite titles that I'm reading right now. And they're not just my favorites. Some of these titles are up for Eisner Awards for 2020. So that's exciting, everybody. But in the meantime, thank you all for watching. Please enjoy your comics. Please put comments in the box below. We'd love to know what you are reading or what hype you're excited for. And we'll see you in the next one.